I believe that anyone can like something and not understand why. After all, entertainment is an emotional experience, and knowing why is less important than how it makes you feel. But I believe the opposite is not true. If you dislike something, you should always try and understand why. Because in searching for that answer, you can form a more complicated understanding of both the subject and yourself. And on that very pretentious note, let's talk about Steven Universe Future and why it disappointed me so much.
I'm Steven Universe. I'm fine!
To talk about the problems in Future, first we need to talk about the issues in the main series. For me, Steven Universe is a good show, but failed at its conclusion. The finale is on its own a pretty good episode, but when viewed as the end of 5 seasons worth of build-up, it just doesn't work. It was too quick, with no decision having room to breathe. A massive problem with Steven Universe has been its inability to tell a story without including Steven. This created an unaddressed problem where everyone in the story used Steven as a crutch, which is a problem in itself, but it also prevented the show from further developing the ideas and relationships of the rest of the cast. And like I said in my Steven Universe Season 5 video, the message that Steven Universe has staked everything on is that communication is key, that talking things out can benefit everyone. So when you have a story where our main villains don't communicate, I'm like, okay, so this is the lesson they need to learn. But the Crystal Gems were no better. We never see them lean on each other and develop deeper bonds outside of Steven. So when the show ends saying how great talking things out is, I call bull, because no one in this show communicates unless Steven is there to give his seal of approval. My disappointment aside, I still had hope for Future. I still thought that it could correct some of the problems and developed an enjoyable, fun 20-episode run. And needless to say, I was disappointed. I didn't like this season of Steven Universe, and the question of why perplexed me. There was no defining moment that soured my viewing experience, but I just had this constant sense of frustration that I couldn't identify. Because on paper, I should love this season. A more nuanced take on Steven Universe that addresses some of the issues of the previous seasons. This should be right up my alley. But then while writing my sarcastic summary, it finally hit me. And I was shocked at its simplicity. My problem was a one-worded question. And? This is the season of and? So many times does the show present an interesting or compelling idea, only to proceed to do nothing with it. Steven still resents White Diamond for almost killing him. And? Steven's living situation wasn't the healthiest. And? Bismuth has feelings for Pearl. And? The entire season is a long series of statements that it proceeds to do nothing with, never exploring what those reveals entail. There are fascinating stories to be told here, and Future walks past all of them. Steven, after spending the entire season pushing people away and bearing his problems, realizes he needs help, and that he can turn to his friends. And the show then skips over all the actual work of Steven exploring those issues and talking about his problems. You might say that we don't need to see Steven go through therapy, that it would be too boring, but I think you're wrong. BoJack Horseman is proof of that. I think that actually exploring Steven's mind and watching him try to process everything would be the most interesting that Steven Universe has ever been. Future merely identifies problems that if you've been watching the show carefully, you've already noticed. It boggles my mind how we can get 19 episodes of Steven denying he has a problem, then never get to see him address the problem or work to overcome it. And I'm sure there's a lot of fans out there that really sympathize and felt what Steven was going through, and I'm not calling you out. I'm just trying to explain my thoughts. Because I wanted this season to be amazing. But this season, with one exception, always felt like it never moved past that and.
Summon my weapon by eating ice cream!
What's in these?
This show has always had a POV problem, in that it is shackled to Steven's view of the world, robbing us of character development. Every story has to be a Steven story, with other things going on around him. Future has this the worst, because it goes a step farther and makes the Crystal Gems into non-characters. A bold statement, but let me explain. The main Crystal Gems don't have character arcs this season. The show has made the decision that all these characters have arrived at their final forms and are now living their best lives. Each gem got a check-in where we got to see how amazing they are, after which point they are dunked in a vat of dum-dum juice so that they can't interfere with the plot, which is what happened. The writers wanted to make Steven mentally breaking down the climax of the season. So to accomplish that, they had to either write out every character that could help, or ignore/make all the characters around Steven infuriatingly passive. Garnet, Pearl, and Amethyst all should recognize that Steven is in distress. Where in earlier seasons they would have injected themselves into the situation to find out how to help, here they take a no from Steven and don't pry any more than that. If you want an example of how pushy they can be, just look at Steven Tag, where Steven tells them no and they go out of their way to push him into playing with them. But when it comes to Steven having an actual problem, they are nowhere to be found. That is so jarring and is completely out of character for all of them. Go to any episode of Steven Universe and you will see the great lengths they would go to help Steven, and to see them barely try is beyond frustrating. They feel like placeholders for their actual selves. So when that big hug scene happens at the end, it feels unearned, because this season effectively kills the bond between these characters, leaving the whole display hollow. This season banked hard on the nostalgia and feels of the original show to do the emotional heavy lifting, which is great for longtime fans, but fails to get me invested on its own.
When we're together, it feels like it's okay to just be me. So I want to be me with you.
There's one line in Future that I believe demonstrates all the failures of Future, and it's Garnet telling Steven that Ruby and Sapphire have their own separate lives.
Your soulmate is your complement, not your missing piece. Ruby and Sapphire love being together, but they each have their own individual lives.
Bullshit. Yes, we see them be separate in the episode. We only ever see them be separate and live separate lives in that one episode. Garnet is never apart in the main show, so this just becomes a question of, oh, we're gonna tell the audience what they should believe, despite all evidence pointing to the exact opposite. Steven wanted to fuse with Connie forever, and if he looks at Garnet as the example, yes, we can see how he gets to that conclusion. But for Garnet to then go around and tell us that, no, that's not how you should live, what the hell are you talking about? That is what you've been telling us this entire time. This is so hypocritical, and I just can't get over the fact that they actually said it.
One time, White Diamond tore into me. Literally. She took my gem.
I think we can all admit that the pacing for Future is bad. The first half is alright, but the last half of the plot feels like it's on a treadmill. A lot of stuff is happening, but it's not moving forward. If you ask yourself, did this season need to exist? The answer is no. I would be more forgiving of this story's pacing if it were a movie, but it's not. It's a full season of TV. We can call it a miniseries all we want, but this is just season 6 as far as I'm concerned. Here's every episode from Future that you need to make this into a movie. Little Homeschool, the ending conversation of guidance, volleyball, though that one you kinda don't need, but it's the best episode out of all of Future. Little Graduation, Together Forever, Growing Pains, Mystery Universe, Fragments, Homeward Bound, but you skip just to White, Everything's Fine, but you just have the therapy scene, then the other two can play out as it is. Episodes like Guidance and Homeward Bound only exist so that one key scene can happen. And before you start typing into your keyboards, though I'm sure most of you have already said that Steven's decline is realistic as a defense for this show, and I'm only gonna say this once. Being realistic doesn't make it better. And moving on from that, let's talk about the thing that killed the tone of this season.
Like I heard yellow and blue and Steven and everyone.
Future has a comedy problem. Every time I start to take it seriously, it starts making jokes, ruining the tension. Everything's Fine is the worst offender of this. This is the episode where Steven is supposed to finally snap, but rather than playing up the dread and anxiety, it muddles the tone by presenting Steven's denial in a more comedic light. Instead of conveying dread, it just feels awkward, which is a feeling I shouldn't get out of the episode before the climax. Steven Universe has never been able to strike a balance between drama and humor. That's why its best episodes are the ones that just commit to one of them. When White Diamond is wailing her eyes out, I shouldn't be giggling. This is a TV show, not a stage play. You can dial it back. Now, final thoughts. The writers have all claimed that Future wasn't planned. They never intended to go beyond season 5 finale, and it shows. I think they took a bold move making the focus about Steven's mental health, but I don't think they stuck the landing. The plot feels contrived with too many instances of characters being ignored to make the plot happen. For as much as this show talks about everyone changing, the world feels static. Characters don't develop, ideas and themes are left unaddressed. Once again, Steven is the sole character who can move the plot forward, which was and remains the show's greatest failing. That said, thank you, Rebecca Sugar. And thank you to your amazing team that brought us all Steven Universe. Whiplash, I know, but when I say Future failed, I mean it failed me. But to others, I'm sure they thought it was a masterpiece, and that's equally valid. I don't make these videos to convince anyone of anything. I make these videos because they're fun, and they help me develop my thoughts on media and how I can be a better storyteller. Steven Universe, to me, isn't perfect, but it's not garbage either. Honestly, I think it's just fine. Thank you all for watching. This has been Sarcastic Chorus. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment and tell me what you thought about Future. This has been Sarcastic Chorus. I wish you all the best. Peace out, Sarcastic fans.